Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just give a few more seconds to let folks get situated. All right, let's get started here. We appreciate everybody for showing up today. My name is Devon Drew. I'm the founder and chief executive at AssetLink. And today we're going to be speaking about recruiting pipeline velocity and how identifying advisors are ready to move today can increase your efficiency and ROI for your business development practice. Before we get started, we'd just love to get a sense of get a sense of the audience here. So have a quick poll for you all. And the question is, how many prospects in your pipeline do you have the bandwidth to currently manage? 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, or over 20? Okay, great. So it seems like the consensus is over 20. So I just I would definitely be, and I'll post results here. I'd definitely be curious of different tactics used to managing multiple relationships, right? And you think about like what we're talking about here today. It's really talking about the ways to fundamentally change your practice when it comes to advisor recruiting. And on today's call, we have, recruiting leaders from broker dealers, RIAs, transition teams who are all facing a very similar challenge, right? How do we stop wasting time and money on advisors who will never move, right? And instead of focusing our energy on the small percentage of advisors who will never move, how do we take that same energy and focus on the advisors that are ready to move, right? In the face of kind of where we are today, the good news is we have a nascent technology called artificial intelligence that's doing a lot of the busy and legwork to help us identify that. Right. By the end of the session, you'll understand exactly how to identify those advisors using data signals surfaced by artificial intelligence that advisors are actually broadcasting, whether they know it or not. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a few brief slides and hopefully have a better understanding of what we're talking about here. And then I'll end the webinar with a demonstration of the AssetLink platform that leverages artificial intelligence to surface these type of intent signals for your use. All right. So what I'll do now is I will briefly share my screen and get to the presentation. Okay. So getting into it, we really want to be able to leverage artificial intelligence to identify advisors that are ready to move today. So there's a number that I'd like to start out with, right? It's somewhat of a scary number and an uncomfortable number, and that's 98%. All right, that's the rejection rate in traditional advisor recruiting. 98% of advisors will just say no, right? Not maybe later, not I'm not interested, just no, right? And think about what that means, right? Your recruiters are making, let's call it 50 calls to get one genuine conversation, right? You're spending thousands of dollars on databases and lead lists of names that go nowhere. All right, your best people are burning out because of cold outreach. And meanwhile, you have competitors that are somehow closing deals. But here's the dirty secret, right, of our industry. Most advisors are calling or you're calling aren't even thinking about moving, right? They're comfortable, they're busy, and your generic pitch sounds exactly like 47 other recruiting calls they've gotten this year, right? The traditional method is broken. High value doesn't work when you're targeting the wrong people. But there's good news, right? There's a better way. At any given time, approximately 5%, that's 5% of advisors have already mentally decided that they're ready to leave their firm. Now, they haven't told their manager yet. They haven't even updated the resume, right? But the decision is already made. These are what we call high propensity candidates, right? And they're hiding in plain sight. The question isn't how do we find more names? It's really how do we identify that 5% that are already looking for the exit, right? Now, what if that 1 in 50 number turns into a 1 in 5 number? Like, what would that do to you and your firm's bottom line? And what if the recruiters spent the time talking to those advisors who are actually ready to have that conversation, right? And that's what we're going to show you here today. Now, if you think about the AI difference, and I know there's AI is a buzzword, right? For the past couple of years, everyone's talking about AI. At AssetLink, we really rely on something called covert public signals, right? Data points that advisors broadcast publicly without without realizing they're revealing these readiness for them to move, right? Because we're not trying to do guesswork, right? We don't want to rely on a gut feeling or outdated list. We want to be able to use regulatory filings, public records, behavioral indicators, right, social signals to predict advisor movement rather than doing it and identifying that before they start actually interviewing. Right. We want to be able to surface that type of intelligence so that you have a good feeling that this should be a target that your story should resonate with. Now, our approach is really built on a simple premise. Advisors move because of chronic friction, right? Something at their current firm is broken and it's not getting fixed. That friction leaves fingerprints in the data, right? So today we're going to walk through the 3 pillars of advisor friction to show exactly which data fields predict movement with pretty strong accuracy. So let's roll up the sleeves and dive in a little bit. So talking about the 3 pillars, right? Here's where we get tactical, right? We've identified 3 structural weaknesses that create unbearable friction for advisors. The first being compliance and risk overload. Now, this is a regulatory signal. Second will be operational stagnation, right? That's a growth signal. And then the third would be economic misalignment, right? That's a compensation signal. Each of these creates a different type of pain, and each one leaves specific measurable traces in public data that we can track and surface via artificial intelligence. And we think this is where the industry is going. Now, whether you think that's going tomorrow or in 2030, that's certainly your prerogative. But that's how, if you think about the 23% of folks on this call that manage that 20% pipeline, right? That's how we get that that over 20 folks that you're currently managing in your pipeline and in your prospects. That's how we increase that closure rate, right? So let's start with the first one. And this, quite frankly, is the most powerful predictor of immediate movement. And this is the compliance and risk overload. Imagine you're an advisor who's built a good practice over 15 years, right? You've got loyal clients, solid AUM, and a reputation that you're proud of, right? Then one day you find out that your firm is under investigation, right? Or a colleague gets terminated, or you're suddenly dealing with a compliance review because someone else at your branch screwed up, right? Now, advisors in that situation are feeling probably one of 2 things. Well, one is fear. Am I going to be painted with this brush? Am I going to get swept up in this investigation? And then resentment. I didn't sign up for this mess. I've been doing it the right way for 15 years, for 20 years, for 30 years. And now all of a sudden I'm under the microscope because someone else messed up, right? Now, how do we identify these advisors? Well, first is actually firm red flags, right? First thing we look for, a high concentration of has regulatory action flags in the past 12 months, right? And these are regulatory filings. Now, the tough part is these regulatory filings are super dense, right? They can be hundreds of pages long. You have to look at a magnifying glass to find these things, right? 2, multiple has civil judgment or has investigation disclosures. And 3, What this does is this tells us that the firm has a compliance culture problem. And there's no faster predictor of an advisor leaving is compliance culture problems, right? The second is advisor level stress indicators, right? Recent has customer complaint disclosures, right? Recent has termination events nearby, same office or region, right? Recent arbitration involvement. Now, these advisors are under personal stress, right? They're worried about their reputation. Their books are at risk, right? And when you call them with a message about a cleaner platform with better compliance support, they're listening, right? So as far as like a messaging for those type of advisors, it's, hey, we noticed recent regulatory activity at your firm. You know, many advisors in your position are concerned about the guilt by association. We'd love to show you how our compliance infrastructure protects your brand. Now, when you're positioning it that way with the advisors that you know are going through this isn't a cold call, right? This is a lifeline. And offering that lifeline is how we can go from 1 to 50 to 1 to 5, right? And just because there's any type of investigation or arbitration doesn't mean the advisor is a bad person, right? It could just somebody got swept up in the wrong thing at the wrong time. It could all be cleared in short order, but being able to identify those advisors is a way to increase your efficiency for advisor recruiting. Now, second, the operational stagnation, right? Now, this is a different type of advisor. These advisors are ones that are hitting a ceiling, right? They want to grow. They have ideas. They're ready to scale their practice. But their firm is stuck in 2005, right? Now, this growth signal, these advisors are frustrated by one of a few different things, right? Whether it's the legacy technology that's slowing them down, limited product access, no support for succession planning or M&A, and then a payout structure that actually hinders or punishes growth, right? Now, here's how we actually spot those advisors in the data with artificial intelligence, right? Because once again, all the data is public, right? And you have these public fingerprints, but how do you actually surface it, right? So high potential advisors in stagnant firms, a way to really hone in on those advisors is looking for above average AUM compared to firm peers, right? So if my firm is $500 million, your firm is $500 million, we have the same efficiency metrics, but my per AUM, my per AUM is above average compared to peers. That tells us, or that should tell you, that there's advisors that are high performing, but the firm that not necessarily is on that same trajectory, right? And then from there, it is looking at the multiple registrations, right? So you're looking at someone that has a Series 65, someone with insurance license, someone's just opened up new LLCs. The way you could read into that is this advisor's entrepreneurial. They have that fire in the belly, right? Recent business entity formations, right? So that means the advisor, and this call could be determined by DBAs on FINRA broker check, right? Now, how many people are scrolling down to the last page of FINRA broker check to look at someone's DBA? I mean, you literally need a magnifying glass to look at that, right? But that is something that if you're able to surface it, you're able to know as soon as it's filed, right? As soon as it hits FINRA, that you know what, this person's entrepreneurial and their firm may not be giving them what they want, right? Now, as far as on the firm side, really looking at low average AUM per advisors across the firm, right? That is a clear indication that the firm is probably, there's something probably wrong with that firm, right? Minimal registration activity. This means no new advisors are joining. If no new advisors are joining, that's a red flag, and probably those advisors are wide open for a conversation. right? High percentage of advisors with 15 plus years at the firm, but low production, right? They're content, right? They're not getting the support that they need. The translation for all of that is the firm isn't attracting new talent or investing in growth, right? These are all signals that are hiding in plain sight that if surfaced, you as a recruiter would be able to get ahead of the curve and talk to people that might actually be willing to have a conversation, pointing these data points out and getting alignment and agreement with them. Now, as far as the let me go back here to the operational stagnation, right? Like a real example of this, right, is we identified an advisor with $180 million in AUM at a regional broker dealer, right? Their firm average 45 million, right? It's high performer, low AUM per advisor, right? He had formed two LLCs that was determined by his DBAs in the past 18 months. His firm, zero technology investment and no M&A support, right? So when our client reached out to, when a prospective client reached out with the conversation about the growth infrastructure, the advisor moved in 90 days, right? And once again, that is identifying these signals that are hiding, and the net result of that is ROI, inorganic growth, right? And the pitch is simple. You've clearly built something special. You're 4x the firm average, right? What would your practice look like with technology and M&A support that actually is built for advisors at your level, right? At that point, you're not selling, you're acknowledging what they already know. They've outgrown the firm, and quite frankly, they're ready to move. Now, the third pillar, right? The third pillar is economic misalignment. Let's just call it a spade a spade. We're talking about money, right? And money often drives decisions, right? But here's the thing. It's rarely just about the payout grid, right? It's about the feeling. It's about feeling like the economics of the relationship don't match the value that you're bringing, right? That's really what it's about, right? And if you think about this compensation signal these advisor feels, it's being undercompensated relative to their production, right? Nickel and dime by platform fees, frustrated by opaque pricing, or surprise costs that just show up and frustrate the heck out of advisors, and then being resentful that new advisors are getting better deals, right? Now, how can you leverage AI to identify the economic friction, right? The first way is high production, low payout environment, right? So if you know a firm is paying out, let's call it 30%, 40%, and you have $1 million producer that probably, if you shifted REA, could get 80, 90%, that is a signal, right? So high production, low payout environment. So advisors, let's call it 100 plus million in AUM at a wirehouse or traditional regional broker dealers that has that entrepreneurial spirit, right? Firm that has below market payout reputation, and then advisor having a longevity 10 plus years, but no equity participation, right? And if someone's an entrepreneur, they might be incentivized by knowing they could get potential upside. And then life triggers, right? Think about all the life events that happen that allows advisors to know they want to move, right? Recent age milestones, right? Approaching 60 could mean a monetization mindset, right? A new partner joins a practice, right? LLC formation, right? That could equal thinking about economics. Geographic moves, relocation could be reevaluation moment, right? All of these life events are triggers that could mean they're open to a conversation. And out of, let's call it 450,000 advisors out there, only 2% of advisors are currently going through a life event, right? So it's a low probability of success if you're spraying and praying and hoping that you're going to hear, hey, I'm going through a divorce, or I just got divorced, or I just moved, I just had a child, right? You really have to be precise with your messaging, right? Now, from a from a positioning standpoint, from a competitive intelligence standpoint, right? You would want to cross-reference recent transactions out of a target firm, and if three advisors have left in the past year, everyone else is doing the same math on their own situation. Just the bottom line, right? As far as messaging, having that approach saying, hey, we work with several advisors who have moved from your firm in the past year. The recurring theme, they feel like they've hit an economic ceiling. Would it be worth 20 minutes to show you what's possible, right? So then you're normalizing the conversation. Others like you have made this move, and here's why, right? It's not you're selling them, is you're sitting on the same side of the table as the advisors. Now let's put it all together, right? We mentioned the three pillars, right? And we've covered them, but let's talk about how data unification and AI, and specifically how AssetLink could potentially turn this into actionable intelligence. Because none of it matters if it's not surfaced or if it's not actionable, right? Now, depending on the structure or the relationship, the way you would use artificial intelligence to be able to help with that is to be able to assign each advisor a movement propensity score, right? Now, each score will be different depending on what you're looking for, the culture of your firm, and what you're looking for, right? So, what this could look like is that cumulative friction score, right? So, as an example, you could score it from 1 to 10, and you could have it to where high propensity is from 8 to 10, right? And that could be multiple red flags across pillars, recent triggering events, compliant firm investigation, a life change, firm event deteriorating, and then the action you could have like priority outreach within 48 hours, and you could have that, let's say, in your Salesforce or your HubSpot or whatever the case is, right? You could have that trigger for that, right? You could have that median propensity be from 5 to 7, and these are just generic ideas. We could obviously take a deeper dive in what fits for you and your firm, but having that median propensity from 5 to 7, right? That could be 1 or 2 friction points. That could be advisor is warm, but not urgent. And then that action could be putting the medium propensity advisors into a nurture campaign for thought leadership, right? So keeping them warm. And then you could have from 1 to 4 that low propensity. And these could be stable environment. We're not seeing any signals, right? Action could just be to monitor them. Maybe they're getting a monthly piece, a quarterly piece, a yearly outlook, and you're continuing to monitor if they're showing any or exhibiting any movement signs, right? Now, here's what that could look like in practice, right? Your Monday could be, hey, you're leveraging AI to create that lead list for you, potentially a propensity report. On a Tuesday, your business development or recruiters could focus exclusively on 8 to 10 scored advisors. Wednesday, you could personalize outreach referencing specific friction points. And then the results being, instead of 50 calls for one conversion, you're making 10 calls for 2 to 3 genuine opportunities, right? So this isn't about working harder, right? It's really about working smarter, right? It's about having the right conversation with the right advisor at the right time. If you think about like how artificial intelligence is and how data unification and surfacing intelligence um, can fundamentally change how you think about recruiting advisors, there's obviously going to be some common objections here, right? It's a nascent technology. Folks could be concerned about, the data, where is it coming from? So this is so I'm trying to give you the objection to any type of pushback you might have when you try to get something like this approved, right? Whether it's AssetLink or whether it's someone else that's doing something in the same realm, right? So I know you're thinking, but let me address some of these concerns, right? First would be, isn't this just data mining? I can get lists from anywhere, right? And it's not about buying lists. It's about the intelligence, right? It's about the like modeling out kind of what fits for you and not just looking at another spreadsheet of 500,000 names. So it's like using multiple data fields, weighted algorithms, real-time updates to identify behavioral patterns that predict movement, and a list just gives you names, right? With the list, you're still stuck with 1 to 50, 1 to 100, might get 1%. Good luck, have at it, right? And we try to give you the timing and the motivation, right? The second concern could be that a stakeholder could have is, what about privacy concerns or regulatory compliance, right? Everything that is used, I know specifically for AssetLink, is publicly available and is used in a public record. Think broker check, think SEC filings, vendor disclosures, business registrations, right? So not accessing anything non-public is a way that you could feel comfortable for what you get access to, and you're not doing anything competitors aren't already doing or that people are doing in a very manual process, right? It's just assigning technology to be able to help you be more efficient. And then the third would be, hey, John, hey, Jill, like this sounds expensive. Um, I would just say kind of compared to what, right? Compared to wasted recruiter salaries, calling dead leads, compared to all the lost leads because of, 6 months too early or too late, right? The cost of not having this intelligence is far higher, right? The firms that win in recruiting aren't the ones with the biggest budgets. They're the ones with the best intelligence, right? And that's what we're seeing. So, at the end of the day, we think the future recruiting is looking at data that's already kind of out there, leveraging what your currently skill set is. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make you a 5-person team with the efficiency and productivity of a 20-person team, right? So I would love to show you all a demo, but before I do, would love to open it up for any type of questions. So feel free to put a question in the chat, and then I'll answer it. And then after that, I can go right into kind of demonstrating how we actually do it in practice. Any questions so far? Okay, so what I'll do now is I will share my screen again, and I will demonstrate how this works in practice. So in practice, right, we're currently monitoring, we're currently pulling data from 412,000 advisors at 8,283 firms, right? Now, the way to surface this intelligence is being able to talk to the database in natural language, right? As an example, before this, I set up some queries, and some of the queries was aligned with the presentation, right? So I said, show me firms under $1 billion in AUM that has high concentration of has regulatory actions, right? So now it shows the logic of what we're looking for, and now it's showing the firms that have these regulatory actions, and then what you could do is you could click the firms and be able to realize that there's 6,248 firms with these type of regulatory actions, right? Um, Kind of going deeper, I did another query. I said, show me firms under $20 billion with high AUM per advisor, but slow growth over the past 3 years, right? And now what we're able to do is surface the AUM, the per advisor, the CAGR that's showing the organic growth rate to be able to surface this for you in real time, right? So this is where it gets interesting. This is when you're able to kind of meet with precision, right? Now, let's look into a firm. So let's take Marshall and Sterling Wealth Advisors. So Marshall and Sterling Wealth Advisors, based in Poughkeepsie, New York, just under $1 billion in AUM. They have 1,000 clients, but they have 2 advisors and 13 employees, right? So automatically, wow, that seems like a lot of clients, a lot of households, and that could be a burden, if not met with the right rigor, right? So even thinking about the 11 other of employees that work at this firm, right? That's still a lot from an efficiency standpoint to manage for 1,000 clients, right? And you're seeing that in the numbers, right? Because the AUM percentile for employee is at 73%, right? And you kind of want to see that number a little bit lower than that, right? So they've been around since 2013. 2 advisors, 86 percentile AUM per advisor. They have 2 offices. We're able to see the services that they provide. The clients, oh, that's a big uptick. So maybe an advisor brought on some additional AUM, right? So they're split between individuals and high net worths, and this is spread across 1,000 clients. Historically, you're seeing up and to the right, so they have a high CAGR, right? But once again, there could be an efficiency burden on some of these advisors, right? They LPL. And let's see this. So, and let's go to the advisor, right? So once I have this information, the firm has regulatory issues. Now let's kind of go take a deeper dive into the advisors, right? So let's go to Kelsey. Oh, let's go back to let's see. Let's go to Kelsey. And Kelsey's 36. She's been with them she's been with them for 4 years. She doesn't have any life event. This is interesting. So she was with Commonwealth, the firm was with Commonwealth. So that means they just went from Commonwealth to LPL. So there could be a whole slew of conversations that's worth having there. She's an investment advisor. So she's a duly registered because she's an investment advisor, plus a BD. She lives in New York. She's not an owner of the firm, right? So there could be an entrepreneur equity type of conversation. She has an accounting degree from Alfred University, and we're able to have for her. She's a CPA as well, so able to have kind of her personal professional email, cell phone, and work phone, right? And from here, let's take a deeper dive into who Kelsey is. She's a wealth manager providing tax-aware wealth management and financial planning for late career professionals and their families. So this tracks being able to her also being a CPA as well. And from a social standpoint, we see that she's been pretty active on on social platforms, talking about high earning professionals unknowingly lose wealth and efficient tax strategies. So all this is intelligence that we're able to surface for you to be able to do more with less. And from here, we could leverage AI to say, show me what I need to know about Kelsey in order to recruit her. So now what we have is how do you actually engage and how do you turn that, 1 to 50 to 1 to 5, right? And it takes being able to surface the type of intelligence, right? So with over 6 years of experience in a strong leadership role at a firm, she has an accounting background. She's active on LinkedIn, frequently posts about tax efficient strategies and retirement planning and women in finance, right? Her firm has experienced rapid growth, and she specializes in you can see what she specializes in: tax efficient wealth strategies. And her posts highlight proactive health, tax planning, right? Supporting women in leadership, right? So now, if you're a recruiter, now you have the intelligence you need to be able to create an email, right? So now you could leverage all of this data, right? That now the AI has the ability to surface for you, and we could do something like create an email inviting Kelsey to lunch next week. Let's do January 12th. Would love to speak to her about our wealth firm, and would love to be able to try to recruit her over based off of our clean compliance oversight and our entrepreneurial spirit that allows advisors to maximize their approach. Can you take my data and integrate that with her data if there's any commonalities, and have it in a professional but casual tone, right? So all of this leads to efficiency, right? So it's one thing to be able to go through a lead list, right? It's another to be able to take the next step and surface the type of intelligence that are showing that advisors that if they're not ready to lead today, based off these publicly available data points, should be very receptive to a conversation, right? And we feel like this is the future of advisor recruiting. Gone are the days are going to these large spreadsheets with columns and tabs. Now we're to the point where you can go from identifying the advisors that have a propensity to leave to identifying when to engage with them and how to engage with them, and then knowing how to win and closing it full circle with a hyper personalized email that you could craft with your own information so that when you do reach out to them, you could take that 1% rate and go up to a 2% hit rate, right? And not only does this email surface here, but you could have it to where it goes to your email, it goes to your draft folder. And from here, and this could be one person, it could be 10 people. And here, you're ready to go, right? You make a couple edits. Maybe you want to put your name in. Obviously, my name is Devon, and you're ready to go, right? And what I would say is that this was seconds, right? So I'd love for you to think about your current process, your current prospects. 23% of you said that you're managing 20 plus relationships, right? Being able to use unified data and artificial intelligence, the question I would have for you is those 20 plus relationships, does that go to 50 that you can now effectively manage because now you're able to surface all this intelligence and know and be triggered when to actually reach out to somebody? Does the folks that had the 1 to 5 relationships that they're managing the prospects, does that now go from 1 to 5 to 10 to 20? And then if you're able to take those conversations and if you're able to surface when someone has that propensity to move based off the public signals, does that increase your likelihood, knowing how good you are at your job, to get a meeting and then being able to close and bring that recruit on, right? So those are the questions that I would leave you with, right? So hopefully you've been able to see that whether you're looking at a firm like AssetLink, whether you're trying to implement your own systems, right? What does the future look like for you and your business? And what I would tell you is that because of the firms that we talk to and we engage with, if you're not looking at what a unified data process could look like with artificial intelligence to surface those insights to you, it's like going into a boxing match with one hand tied behind your back, right? So what I would love to do is, once again, does anyone have any questions? I'm happy to take a deeper, more personalized dive after this, but we'll love to open things up to see if anyone has any questions. We have a shy bunch here today. So what I would say is, so I had this scheduled for 45 minutes. We're now at 40 minutes. So what I would do is I'll give you 5 minutes back in your day. You'll have a brief survey that comes after this. Would appreciate if you could fill it out. Once again, my name is Devon Drew. Would love to be able to discuss your recruiting needs and see if that we could be a solution for what you're looking for. Have a great rest of your day. Feel free to ping me anytime.